Welcome to All About Agatha, the podcast dedicated to reading and ranking every single mystery novel written by the Queen of Crime, Dame Agatha Christie. I'm Kemper Donovan, and I am back in the United States after my wonderful trip to England. I hope you all enjoyed my live episode from the Agatha Christie Festival. You'll be hearing a bit more about all that I discussed on that trip in episodes to come, both here and on Patreon, but not for a little bit. On today's episode, I have a new book that is out that I think is going to speak to many of you out there. A puzzle mystery created very much in the vein of Agatha Christie, very intentionally in a Christie-like way. Let's just get right to the interview, where all will be explained. All About Agatha is a very text-based podcast, which is why I'm so excited to be doing something a little different today with my two guests, two for the price of one, because they are an author-illustrator team who recently came out with a book that I think many of you are going to enjoy. The book is called You Are the Detective, The Creeping Hand Murder, a Solve-It-Yourself mystery. It came out on September 16th of this year in 2025. And rather than a straightforward narrative, it's a compilation of interviews and letters and photographs and newspaper clippings, the contents of various people's pockets, just all sorts of clues and evidence provided directly to the reader, who in this way is given the means of solving a mystery. The author is Maureen Johnson, #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Stevie Bell mysteries, among many other books. Longtime listeners will remember that I've had Maureen on the podcast before to discuss those Stevie Bell mysteries as well as other works she's written. I'm a big fan. The illustrator is Jay Cooper, who has written and or illustrated more than 25 books for children, including The Spy Next Door, and who also designs advertising campaigns for Broadway shows. Maureen and Jay came out in 2021 with a book I really enjoyed, Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered in a Quaint English Village, which sends up in loving and hilarious fashion all the tricks and tropes of the classic mystery genre that we love. And I'm very excited to speak with them about their latest collaboration. Welcome back, Maureen, and welcome, Jay.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back.
That was a great intro. I want that intro all the time. You can intro us anywhere.
I can MC all of your events. Well, my intro is not yet done, because now I would like to just talk a little bit about the book itself. Let's set the scene for what you two have done here with The Creeping Hand Murder. And I'll do the setting, since we've got a classic puzzle mystery, and it's honestly a joy to describe those. So in this book, it is November 1933, aka smack dab in the middle of the golden age of detective fiction. And 7 people have received these mysterious poison pen letters, the moving finger style, shall we say. And we get to see these letters, most of which have to do with 2 recent tragic deaths. First, the actress Billie Snooks, who died from an overdose of cocaine. One of the 7 is accused of providing her with the drugs, another of profiting from her death. You get the idea. And second, the footman Desmond Plott, who drowned suspiciously in a lake on the preceding New Year's Eve. There was definitely something fishy about that drowning. And yes, that pun was intended. So these 7 people are subsequently summoned via another round of anonymous letters, which we also get to see, to 19 Tootley Row, which is the home of one of these 7 people, the flamboyant Mr. Ambrose Belvoir. And on the evening they are summoned, a murder is announced style, one of them ends up dead in a very curious way. This is the novelist Roy Peterson, who is just sitting there in this sitting room, as one does, while everyone argues about what's going on with these poison pen letters and whatnot. These people all know each other, of course. And everyone assumes that Roy is asleep, or at least super drunk, because he's almost always super drunk. But they discover, in due time, that he has been murdered. And the murder weapon, a bloody ice pick, is sitting right there underneath his chair, and yet no one was seen to approach him. So how the heck did the murderer pull this off? This is why the case gets the nickname of the Creeping Hand Murder, because it seems as though a disembodied hand must have done the deed. So this is a super fun, classic locked room puzzle mystery with all sorts of clues laid into not only the text, but the illustrations that are available to the reader. Maureen and Jay, I hope you will take this as the compliment it's meant to be, but it's kind of like a breezier version of Janice Hallett's The Appeal.
Thank you.
Which is another you solve it, sift through the clues mystery many people have enjoyed in recent years. I actually had your book laying out on my dining room table this morning as I was preparing for this interview. And despite the very creepy hand on the cover, both my kids were obsessed with paging through it and looking at all the pictures, so much so that it caused an argument since they both wanted it at the same time. Like they were arguing over your book. So if that is not a ringing endorsement,
wow,
I don't know what is. I just have to ask, I'm going to stop talking now, but I have to ask how this project came together. Was this something that you wanted to do back when you were collaborating on your guide to not getting murdered in a quaint English village? I mean, it's very obvious that you're both big mystery aficionados and just sort of like steeped in this classic genre.
Well, there's so much to tell you. First of all, we should explain how we know each other. Jay and I went to college together and dated in college and moved to New York together, and we were roommates and dated. So that is how we know each other. And he used to draw everything. I used to write stories for him. Like we have always been kind of going back and forth with this stuff.
So you were roommates who were dating, but not.
Yeah. Well, no, we moved to New York together.
Okay.
So I was saying we lived together.
Interesting choice of words, Maureen.
Well, it's all part of the mystery. But no, we also moved with another person. So like a bunch of us were sharing this apartment.
I see. These are the crazy things we do in our 20s. Yeah, go ahead.
And that person is my agent.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. My agent Kate.
Wow. We're
like a sitcom.
Quite the tangled web.
It's not even that tangled. It's pretty much just like Scooby Gang situation. In fact, we're going to flip one more card, Jay, just for
what? Oh yeah, okay,
yeah, just for listeners of All About Agatha, because this hasn't been announced yet, but I'm going to sneaky announce it. So like,
sweet,
nobody tell anybody. There is a card game being made of Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered in the Quaint English Village, and the person who's making that is also one of our closest friends who was also living with us at some point.
Wow.
In that same apartment.
We keep it in the family.
That's amazing. Well, so you guys have then been collaborating for not to age you, but for decades.
Oh, I mean,
hundreds of years.
I think, to be fair, so Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered was the first time we collaborated, professionally. And so it was like, it's like one of those things where like you let the chili steep, right? Until that sauce is ready. And this sauce just took, a couple of decades, but it turned out to be wonderful once it got to a point where like we'd both done the thing that we were doing and then like sort of like, well, let's do this thing together. And it turned out to be great.
That book was based on an article I wrote for Goodreads. They were like, it was promo for one of the Stevie Bell mysteries. Yes. And because I absorb all of these, and I'm just a walking bag of information on these things. I just wrote a list of here's how you don't get murdered in a quaint English village. And not for nothing, my husband is English, and I based it on the village. He was raised in a place called the New Forest, which is absolutely that village that all the murders happen in, 100%. Yeah. And the person who would commit the murder 100% is my father-in-law. And the person who would go down for it 100% is the vicar, who he cannot usually stand. But then an editor was like, do you want to make a book of this? And I was like, okay. But then I was like, but I need Jay to do this, because the fun of that book is the list they're funny, but like it's what Jay did with it that makes it amazing.
Well, that's okay. That's not true. The list is hilarious, but
don't you fight me, Jay.
I'd sent a circle of friends a Christmas card. It was like a New Year's card after 2016, and it was done in the style of Edward Gorey, and it was basically like taking out 2016 in 100 different ways, a la Edward Gorey, rolled up in a scroll and mailed to everybody in a scroll style, like wrapped with twine and whatnot. And like it was the first time I'd ever tried to sort of like replicate or do anything a la Gory, who I absolutely worship, but that style, and Maureen was like, this is kind of the style that this should be in. And so we did that together. And then after that, wonderful collaboration, which was so fun. We decided to work together again.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense that you would want to work together again and sort of up your game, because that's the thing about this book. I think definitely, like, I agree. The illustrations in Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered in Quaint English Village, they absolutely, they enhance. You're sort of playing off of each other. So that collaboration works in one way. But here, one of my favorite things about this book is that the clues aren't just hidden in the various texts that we come across, which, is what we're used to as mystery readers. Probably the key clue, actually, in the whole book is visual. It requires the reader to look closely at more than one of the illustrations in the book, do a little compare and contrast. And what's more, and don't worry, I'm going to be vague here so that I don't spoil anything, it's the same visual trick that happens once already while we are sifting through the clues, and which gets explained to us so that we're very much on notice about this sort of thing. And I will admit, I admitted this to you, off mic before we started recording. I completely missed this key visual clue. And I had that satisfying palm to forehead moment of feeling extremely stupid and like I should have seen it when the solution was explained to me at the end.
That's my whole job.
Absolutely. You
putting that loop back in is just. Thank you for pointing out. I'm so pleased someone knew I did a loop back in there. But they said, "Do you want to do another book like that guide?" And I said, "I don't really want to write another list book."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it honestly for like a year. And one day I was walking the dog, and like a thunderbolt, I was like, "Oh, I know what I want to do." It was like that, where you're just walking along, you're like, "Oh, wait a minute, I know." What I wanted to do was bring back something from the 1930s that I got all these reprints of as a kid. And these are dossier mysteries. That's literally, Dennis Wheatley wrote 4 of them, and they are case books. And what you get is a big book that is the case file, documents, photographs. In the original 30s ones, you got real objects like hair.
Wow.
It's sort of what some of there's kits now like Hunt a Killer and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There are box sets like this, but this is very much exactly like the 1930s style case book. But instead of doing photographs, I drove an artist nearly to his point of madness, create all of the photographs and the evidence. This poor man.
Yeah, I mean, how did you go? That must have been, it must have required an intense amount of back and forth, because like you were layering in clues. Like there's a lot of information there's almost more information, I'd say, in the visuals, because this is so visually oriented, than in, the text of the newspaper articles, and, certainly not like the explanatory letter at the end, but like, it just must have required a lot of direction and collaboration, right? Like I just have to imagine this was much more intense than your first project.
It was actually really, I loved it. I thought it was so fun.
It was different.
I slept at night though. That's the thing, is I got to sleep and Jay didn't.
There was an intense, I think it was like, there was a 2 months really when we were like really in the sauce, where every day, so Maureen set up a Miro board, like this online, like whiteboard that had all of like everything organized in different areas. Like, this is the location. Here's the character, the suspects, yada yada yada. And like I would go in and I would do an illustration, and then I would scan it in, and I would send like just a low res JPEG, and sort of like, I would pin my okay, well, here's what this person looks like. Here's what this person looks like. Well, here's what this room looks like. And then Maureen would go in and she would scrutinize everything and say, you can't have that there. That needs to be here. There should not be windows in this room. So there was this level of, because like your guide was really like, it was like loose jazz, where it didn't even matter if my illustrations completely, and often they didn't completely match the writing at all. It's just sort of like it was a vibes thing.
It was funnier that way.
Was like, It was funny, but this was really, really, really specific. So there was a level of attention to detail that Maureen like absolutely had to have, and I had to go backtrack on a couple of illustrations. I mean, not incredibly many, but a couple of them, and make changes to them. But it also, I kind of like slowly got into the vibe of this too, of like, okay, well, I need to make sure that on the evidence page, when they get like all of the objects out of the person's pocket, well, that lighter has to be sized correctly to the kitchen matches and these keys. So I had to like scour antique stores and like buy all of the like items that were as close as a match as I could to illustration to make sure that like I was excited. Like I really like it was really down a rabbit hole and really, really fun and unique for that.
What do you think was the hardest part about collaborating? Did you guys drive each other nuts at any point? Did this ever get difficult?
For Jay, probably. For Jay, probably.
I think so. I mean, but you know,
I don't think we were angry
part of any collaboration.
I don't think we were angry at each other. I think it was just a lot of work.
Were it was just a lot of work.
I know that
we weren't like breaking up like John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Like it was just sort of like, all right, well, then we're going to go back and we need to redo this riff now and lay down that track again because you know something's changed and now the beat doesn't match. And that's just part of the process. I think it's like putting together IKEA furniture. Once you're like, and I'm only saying this because I just dropped my son off at college for a sophomore year. And I just spent an entire day putting together IKEA furniture. So I was trying to lay down the Zen level of like, all right, son, this is how you do IKEA. You lay out all of your items and then you start with one and you slowly go through and you know you're going to have to backtrack 4 steps at some point and change something major and you just Zen it. And then you go, and then that's just how that's how you make the recipe. That's how metaphors there to guy, all kinds of metaphors there.
I didn't think we would be making an analogy to the assembly of IKEA furniture, but that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I feel like as one who can't draw, if I were collaborating with an artist, I would just feel guilty being like, oh, you're going to have to do that again. Just because, for me, it's like, I don't even know how people who can do that.
He's like, he's a magic man.
Yeah.
It's like he's a magic man. The thing is that Jay can do so many things. And I basically just do one thing really hard. Like I just go hard on my one thing. Right. And Jay's like, but I can do this. And I'm spinning this. And look at me. I've got bouncing a basketball in my one finger. Look at this. While he's also helping run stuff for Broadway shows. And like and then he's like, oh, I stayed up all night and I did 72 edits on these drawings. The man works. The man works hard. And I just want to say if he's gone gray, which he hasn't, but like I'm surprised. Kemper, there's a little puzzle in here for you. And you've already gotten over 2 things, and you've already gotten one of them. But there are 2 Agatha Christie big nods in this book. You've already mentioned one.
Okay, well, I think I might be about to mention the next. Okay,
I'm excited.
This is let's see if this is a seamless segue. So I want to talk about the backstory that you've created here, having to do with this actress who died of a cocaine overdose. Mm-hmm. So there's this death that, and that's really sort of the center. We have two previous deaths, but hers is kind of the central reason why all these people have been called together. It's a big part of it. And this immediately made me think of the first Poirot short story that Christie wrote, The Affair at the Victory Ball. So that story involves an actress who is found dead from a cocaine overdose. And before I accuse you of cribbing from Christie, which I mean, there is no shame in that game. I mean, this is a game that we all love to play, right? As mystery writers, I have to point out that Christie herself was cribbing when she wrote that story from real life. Her fictional creation was the actress
Billy Carlton.
Yes. Well, so the fictional actress in Christie's story is Coco Courtenay, but the real flesh and blood person is Billy Carlton. So here's a funny thing. While I was reading this, I was doing research for my presentation on true crime in Agatha Christie's fiction for the Agatha Christie Festival, which I just traveled to. And I was literally researching the case of Billy Carlton and her cocaine overdose while I was reading your story about an actress named Billy who dies of a cocaine overdose. And I definitely caught. Was that the other one that you were?
That's not the one, but I was actually not using the Christie. I was just using this. Funnily enough, I forgot about the victory ball because Billy Carlton dies after, I think in real life, was it actually called the victory ball? It was a victory ball.
Yep, because it was in 1918. Yeah, it was like right in because the war ended in November 11th, 1918 was the Armistice Day. And then they had all these victory balls. And I was literally, you even have down to, you talk about her daring diaphanous dress that she wore that night. And Jay, you have a wonderful, I love your... You've got an illustration of it, which reminds me of that video of like the woman with like the twirling dresses kind of, and she's sort of on the stage with this gown. And in real life, Billy Carlton, I had the photo in my presentation on Agatha Christie and True Crime. She had this daring diaphanous dress. It's very see-through, like you can see her whole body. It's beautiful.
It's really surprising.
But I was so in heaven with all of those little reference points. So I love that you're kind of giving Billy Carlton her day here. I thought that was a really bold choice to give her the same name, but like I appreciated that. And even down to the detail that she took cocaine, but she also took other drugs to bring her down so that she could actually sleep. That's how, she would go to these parties and like take lots of coke and then not be able to sleep. And like, it's not really clear whether or not it was the cocaine or the other drugs or the reaction between the cocaine and those drugs that actually killed her. And like all of those details are in this book.
Yeah. And you've probably read Dope Girls, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend reading Dope Girls, which covers a lot about this period of time and also like these sorts of things that happen. And there's a TV show now, which I've just started watching that kind of has nothing to do with the book, but it's still kind of good. I kind of like it. It's sort of like the women's version of like a Peaky Blinders kind of a thing, but
got it.
That is not it. Although that is like, there's going to be more people are going to find, but there's like a big one.
Well, okay. Well, so
which has to do with the murder method.
Oh, that has to do with the murder. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was, of course, keeping a list of various little Christie references here. So, also Peril at End House in general, we just have to mention, because that is another one in which it's very Dope Girls kind of adjacent, because that one too is another just sort of like cocaine-addled story of Christie's in which people are being ravaged by drugs supplied to them by one of their own. There's an attractive Lothario character, Felix Darlington. He's one of our 7 suspects. He reminded me a lot of Anthony Marsden in And Then There Were None. They both have an issue with driving too fast, a little too recklessly. We have another actress here, Vida Simpson, who reminded me a lot of the dingbat actress Jane Hellier, one of my very favorites, who appears in some of the Miss Marple stories. And just as in Jane's case, is Vida really that stupid, or is that a mask that she's potentially wearing? We've got a reference to Harley Street. Thank you for that. I was like, check, check, check. Yes, I got my Harley Street reference. And I did think that there was a deliberate reference to this Poirot short story, 4 and 20 Blackbirds, which involves this mystery surrounding the habits of a man who comes into a restaurant and starts acting differently from how he usually does, because there is a whole section. Maybe it's central to the solving of the mystery. Maybe it's a red herring. I'm not going to say, because I don't want to spoil things for people who haven't read this yet, but that was making me think of that short story, which I really, really liked. There's a big old Lord Edgware Dies reference that I won't get more specific about because that would be too spoilery, but I don't think that I'm capturing the one that you are referencing, am I?
I'm actually going for Cards on the Table.
Oh, sure. Of course. Yes. It's a very Cards on the Table in that they're all in a room. Everyone's in a room. This person seemingly is not approached yet is stabbed, right? And is dead. And everyone's like, how'd that happen? Yes, of course. Of course.
Basically, if you look, you'll just keep finding more.
There's so much. I feel like that's just scratching the surface. Well, that you kind of answered it already, and I knew this because I know you, Maureen, but I was curious, are these references deliberate? Like, did you sit down and say, I want to do, or do you just kind of exist in this melange of, Agatha Christie soup and just sort of like Golden Age mystery and other mystery author soup, were you, as you were just coming up with this, these references were, more subconscious than intentional, or maybe a little bit of both? Like how did that all work?
I would like you to imagine, I do exist in this soup because this is happily now my job. Imagine like a room of like someone who's making potions, and there's like all kinds of stuff on the wall that you occasionally pick up and go, I want the scent of this, a pinch of this, like, or I've seen this used, and how can I use that differently? Or how can I play upon that? Yeah, it's a nod to all of it. And the Billy Carlton I took directly.
Sure.
Sometimes I take actual historical stuff pretty straight out and mask it very little, but like I used the Lindbergh baby in Truly Devious,
Sure.
things like that. So it's a conscious effort, but also to think about all these things, but also you have to make something totally new, but as a kind of appreciative nod to people that love this as much as I do, just to be like, hey y'all, I'm one of you.
Yeah.
Like this is it's not it, but it's all in here somewhere.
Yeah. No, that's part of the joy of a book like this. I mean, it feels like it's made for the fans, like it feels like this is made for, not that it can't be enjoyed by other people. I mean, that's the great thing too. You can enjoy it on two different levels because it works. It's not like you need to be steeped in Agatha Christie or Golden Age mystery or anything like that to appreciate this. But if you are, and you probably are, if you're buying it, you're going to really appreciate it and feel like, oh, this is a team who know their stuff and who are like winking at me, but have, created their own story, but clearly are inspired by a lot of these, masters of the genre. The other thing I really appreciated is that there is a lot of lightness and humor in here, which is not surprising coming from the team who did Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered in a Quaint English Village. And again, not just in the text, but in the visuals themselves.
Yes.
The anonymous poison pen letters are so over the top. They're so fabulous. They're so fun. And then, so I have to ask about the chicken. There is this glamour shot of the actress Vita Simpson, and she's holding a chicken in it. I think it's a chicken. I just loved it, and I just want to know like how did the chicken come to exist there?
That's Jay. That was entirely Jay.
But that's like right. She's comedy venturing into drama. Is that correct, Maureen? And like her existing headshot would have something. Like it's a glamorous, but with a nod to comedy or rub a chicken. So I know it's a little bit on the beak, I guess, in this case, as opposed to on the nose. But I just wherever I could that wouldn't butts up any evidentiary details, right? I tried to like do a little bit of that. And actually, talking about Agatha, there's also a visual. There's the head waiter plate. I put a fictitious. I've got characters behind him dining, and on one side there's two characters from Your Guide that make a little Easter egg cameo in here, and one's this old the Dowager Countess who's poisons everybody. So she's on one side, but on the other side, noticing what's going on is Hercule and Miss Marple on the other side. So
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's tiny. So I like to throw Easter eggs in whenever I can and have fun with things.
Well, it's really playful. Like the chicken, I thought was such a playful touch and I love that. It's kind of like, I feel like Vita, because she's a very desperate actor also, like you get the sense that like Vita's career isn't necessarily thriving. Like at one point, this was so funny too. And this is where I think the visuals and the text, like you worked closely together and they're really playing off of each other. Because at one point in her interview, she admits that she's not currently in a show, but then she preemptively tries to get the detective to like agree to come to whatever new show she'll eventually be cast in. She's like, but will you come? Will you come and he's like, no. So it all worked. And I love those sorts of light right elements, it just makes it such a pleasure. And it's so Christie. I mean, I've beat this drum so many times and I will continue to do so. But one of the things that I think, especially if you only watch adaptations and perhaps especially recent adaptations of Agatha Christie, you might think that she's dark and dour, but she's not. Like, she's so funny and there's so much lightness to so much of her work. And that's a big reason why I think she's as successful as she is. And I just have to say, above all, I appreciated the comedy in Roy Peterson, our central victim, his terrible novel. It's called Henderson's Can, or Can, I guess. The last 11 pages, I believe, of which consist solely of punctuation marks.
Yes.
So it's like this sort of like low rent, James Joyce, hard to read, really trying hard to be pretentious and hard to access. But we get the sense that perhaps Roy Peterson is not necessarily the gifted author that he thinks he is, and that he has fooled so many others into thinking that he is. And at one point, I think we learned that in a drunken stupor, he admitted that he was inspired by his cat walking across the typewriter. That's what directly inspired the punctuation marks in the 11 pages. I was thinking of Raymond West a little bit. Christie has so much fun at his expense. Like, those are just the sort of details that I think are so important in something like this, especially because it's not straightforwardly jokey and humorous all the way through. The book even ends on a fairly somber and touching note. So you really did have to balance, I think, the lightness with a story that is legitimately dark and disturbing at times.
Yeah, it was amazing because the time of going back and forth with Jay, because as a novelist, I'm usually just on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I have a book due in 7 days, for example. So I'm
so sorry, Maureen.
Hey, listen, I'm just sitting here like, well, another day of me. Okay, me, what's up? But then this is a delight because you'd have an idea and then you'd wake up and there would be this astonishing artwork. And then there was more to work with. And I could talk to Jay and be like, you made all this happen. Like, now there's more in here. And now there's more to think about. And that Jay is so funny. He's so funny. The funniest one that gets me is there's a character that comes in as the inspector. They're all sick. They all get food poisoning. And so he has to enlist his nephew to become like an undercover spy.
Yes.
And we have this whole thing where the undercover spy part happens. And I said, Jay, I want this picture to kind of look like this. And we drew it instantly. It's amazing. Like, he's just like, here you go. And I just laughed so hard at this picture. So it was it was just so great to have somebody you wake up and there's beautiful stuff on your book because you're working with somebody else. Not for nothing. I just want to shout out to Jay. Another thing that Jay does is that this man, honestly, hardest working man in show business, because to make those poison pen letters, he wasn't happy enough with any of the letter forms that he could draw or find. So he sourced them all from 1930s magazines and print.
Wow.
So, Jay, you can explain more about how you did this, but this is really something.
That's interesting.
I did. It's funny you say James Joyce, because I actually, when I was researching, I went to all the antique stores I could find, and I bought every piece of 1930s, or like if I got the 1941, I wasn't too stressed out about it. Or if I was like down to like 1928, I was too stressed out about it. But I was trying to make sure that like those letters, those words that were cut out were authentic. But not even that. It's just so you either fake it with a font or you do it with handwriting. And my handwriting sucks. I mean, just completely. I have terrible penmanship, so it was just the most straightforward way to go about it. But anyway, you mentioned Kemper. You mentioned James Joyce. Actually, there was a couple of real treasures I came across when I was doing the process. And these things I kept separate. One was a newspaper that had a obituary for James Joyce. It was when he died. And that was going a little bit up in the 1930s. And then another one was a magazine that had an article written by Amelia Earhart about a play on aviators that she'd seen. So she was writing a one-page review of this aviator play just 2 years before she died. So I got to really just embrace the antiquarian side of myself and the ephemeral things that I love in making it. And I kill them. I kill them. I even told the antique people when I was buying them, I was like, I'm going to murder these in the most bloody fashion. And they're like, okay, well, give me your money. But it did that. The thing I want to say about Maureen and the process of this all, and you touched upon this, Kemper, about that somber note at the end. That was actually a surprise to me in the process, was how much she really cared about the characters that she creates. Like, genuinely cares, and would say like notes to me in private, or on that Miro board, like, the important thing is that these people get, or this person gets, that what's due to them, or these people get, this person gets their vengeance, or some sort of satisfaction, or we have to have sympathy for this character or that character. There's a real love of the characters that she creates that I was really kind of floored by, that, that level of real empathy.
Well, you make them and you're nice to them, and then you beat them, you kill them.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of our episode. We just wanted to take a moment to ask you, our dear listeners, for a favor.
If you haven't already done so, we would very much appreciate it if you take a moment to, give us a rating or a review wherever you're listening to this podcast.
It really helps the podcast out, because ratings and reviews make it much easier for other Christie fans such as yourselves to find our podcast.
And the more ratings and reviews we get, the more people we can reach.
It should take you a matter of seconds, and lucky you, we're going to provide you with those seconds right now, so go to it.
Thank you so much. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
There's a very clear-eyed sense of humanity, I think, in this whole project, or in the book. It's a book. I'll call it a book. That also reminds me of like what Christie does, and some of my favorite kind of golden age fiction, which is not pretending that people are better than they are. And like, you really do, you poke all the holes in these people that you possibly can. And so many of them are ridiculous or craven or mercenary or whatever. But then, some of them, or some aspects of them, are noble and loving. And you give the sort of, the full 360 view of who these people are all over the course of something that is super, super zippy and entertaining, and a puzzle to be solved. But that's what I love. Like, I in my favorites of these books, you don't even realize until you get to the end and you're thinking about all this. You're like, wow, I just got, I had the experience of engaging with characters in a narrative, but in such an entertaining way that I barely even realized how much I learned until I sat back to think about it. And some people don't ever choose to sit back and think about it. I've sat back and thought about it for hundreds, if not thousands of hours now, over almost the course of a decade. And I'm happy I have. But like that, and that's what people can do with these mysteries. And I feel like you're absolutely doing that here. And like in such a, compact. The other thing, and again, I also say this as a compliment, this is a fast read. I read it in 2 sittings only because I literally had to go somewhere and I was annoyed that I had to leave it. But what I did, and I did this on purpose, because as I started it, I wasn't sure how quick it was going to be. And then as I got into it, I was like, "Whoa, this is really good." And I was really into it. And I was like, I think I can do this all. Okay, this is great. And then I was like, okay, no, it's not that fast. But I made a point of getting to the end of all of the clues and the evidence, because then you have a point in the book where you say, okay, detective reader, you have everything, and now figure it out. And then when you turn the page, you're going to get your solution. So that's where I stopped. And I actually had a night in between when I got all the clues and when I read my solution. And I totally thought about it as I was going. Did I figure it out? No, hell no, not at all. But that was so fun, and that's the fun of those case files that you were talking about, Maureen. And I was going to ask you, other than Christie, and who again was the author of those 1930s case files?
Dennis Wheatley. Another thing, I'm kind of thinking about things that are coming back, like Cain's Jawbone.
Yeah, well, even honestly, Henderson's Can, like the title made me think of Cain's Jawbone immediately. And Cain's Jawbone,
it's a very silly title.
Yeah, it's very silly, but like, yes, I think that too. That's an infamous puzzle that got all that play recently on like TikTok, right? So a lot of people know about that one. Did you ever try to solve that?
I have it. Yeah. I mean, so that was created in the 30s as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of came back. I own it and I own the sequel. And the sequel was written by John Finnemore, who is he's like a comedian screenwriter from England. He's great. He is the person that is filling in for Terry Pratchett on the new Good Omens. He's very funny and he solved it. But he did it during lockdown. Like I think there's a reason nobody really solved it in the past, because it is so hard and so full of references that I don't know who would be able to solve this without a significant amount of research material.
Yeah. Like you need a PhD in like 1930s pop culture, basically, right?
No, you need like a classicist degree. Like you need to know your classics inside and out.
Wow.
And it would take people months to do it if they could try it, if they could get anywhere at all. So the whole idea is it's the jumbled pages of a book that when you put it together tells the story of, I think, 6 murders and their solutions. And there's only one possible way of assembling the pages.
Right. It's like you have all of the pages, right? It's not like they're missing pages or anything.
There's 100.
All the pages, and there are 100. And there's just 100 pages. And it sounds, I mean, that's what's so great about it. It sounds not easy, but it sounds very doable.
And it's
really not.
It's the hardest puzzle in the world. But it's one of those things where you just sit and what I also wanted with this was that you didn't need any outside. It's not like you have to solve this little internal puzzle within it to do. It's a straight up mystery and everything is in there. You don't have to look anything up. You don't have to research anything else. It is all in there.
Yeah. I'm curious, given that, I mean, it's obvious to me that you love the puzzle. I know that you love the characters. I know that you're a very, like me, a sort of holistic reader of Christie, and you always give her due as to all of the wonderful writerly things that she does beyond the puzzles that she created. But it's very obvious that you love the puzzles. Are you a fan of John Dixon Carr as well?
Yes.
Curious. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I find that sometimes Carr, and people will get mad at me for saying this, but Carr, as a stylist, a prose stylist, some of his books I just find hard to get through.
They're a little, there are some style issues to these things.
Yeah. It's just everything Christie did in terms of her dialogue and just the way that she's able to convey character and setting within like a sentence or two, just the lightness of everything, which is, the easiest thing to dismiss and say, oh, well, that means it's actually not weighty, it's not worthy of consideration. No, it means it's actually brilliantly done, because it's like so hard to do that. I sometimes feel a little bogged down by everything else other than the puzzle. Well, I know when I get to the end of the puzzle, I'll be like, wow, that's so cool. And I never would have guessed that. And you're so ingenious, John Dixon Carr. But it can be a little bit of a slog to get there. And that's where Christie just so far exceeds him, where it's almost never a slog,
Whenever people say things like that, if it's so easy, you do it.
Right.
You do it. Okay. You do it.
You write 66, delightful mysteries. Go for it.
No, you do it. Let's okay, fine. You do it.
Well, speaking of doing
things, do people dismiss Agatha as like, I mean,
oh yes,
constantly.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's the queen. I'm surprised by that. I mean, you guys are obviously more, steeped in this than me, but I find it surprising.
It's gotten a lot better. There are a lot of people like me who are just willing to, talk about this ad nauseum. But yeah, it's still, I still think to this day, and the genre was always from the beginning not only championed by women who were doing the writing, but had a very large female reading audience. And honestly, I think there was always a lot of misogyny and sexism involved in the dismissive attitude that was, and that prevails. Why am I speaking in past tense?
Yeah, I mean, let me. You have 15 hours for me to tell you about YA, but there were ranges at the time. Like for example, I love Dorothy L. Sayers. I love her. I love Josephine Tey, and I think they're all also incredibly readable still. Mm-hmm. And stylistically, they're doing different things, but they're astonishingly good. But yeah, there's always an element of like, oh, a popular book was written by a woman. Welcome to garbage. Just
well, it's why the noir genre, even to this day, I mean, and my late co-host Catherine Brobeck and I, who Maureen knew, we started talking about this from episode 1, but it's just, the way that Catherine actually, when she was doing like a thesis in college, she wanted to do Agatha Christie and she wasn't allowed to because they were just like, that's not worthy of consideration. And that was around like, I don't know, 2000, something like that. She had to do more like male noir writers, and people, no one's ashamed of loving Raymond Chandler or Dashiell Hammett. And so do I, by the way.
I did H.P. Lovecraft. I did the racism of H.P. Lovecraft in mine. Like, that's absurd.
Right. I mean, we can love them all, like there's choices don't have to be made, but there's just no question that historically there was that bias. And of course that the bias continues, but we're righting those wrongs every day. And honestly, you guys are part of that with this. I mean, this is now your second collaboration. I have to ask, beyond the card game that's happening, but don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone out there. But beyond that,
trust.
Will you be collaborating again on something?
Yes. We'll be doing another one, at least one more of these.
Oh, wonderful. I can't wait. Can you tell me anything about it? Or is it just like in its early stages?
We just know we have to do it. It hasn't been started yet. So when I get my Stevie book in 7 days, it's on the list. Yeah.
But who's counting?
It's fine, you guys. I'm a writer who lands on the Hudson every single time. I'm always landing on the Hudson. It is my process. I don't know. Look, I've written a lot of books, and you have to embrace what you are and how your brain works. And mine goes into a certain higher processing decision mode as pressure goes on. It's like release the chemical, and then a chemical comes into my brain that makes everything very clear and orderly. And it happens the same way every time. So I have to say, okay, I accept that is when my brain releases the drug that makes everything very obvious and clear and orderly and calm.
You're like the MacGyver of writing.
Oh boy. That is exciting.
That is something to put on a business card or
a
bio or something. The MacGyver of writing. I love that. Well, I really appreciate you both taking the time to speak with me about this book. And I really do think that this is a book that a lot of listeners to this podcast will appreciate, because it's not only an ingenious puzzle that you absolutely have the tools to solve as a reader, but as I said, it's a work that is steeped in a lot of affection for Christie and the classic mystery genre overall. So I had a blast reading it and talking with you, and I just want to thank you for being on the podcast.
And we hope that because it really is a totally offline, you sit and concentrate activity, that it will give you like a break, a vacation in 1933, where you are a detective solving a murder. You have to, I've seen people already with their little notebooks out, making notes and talking to other people. Like already, I because there's some advanced copies that have gone out, and I'm like, this is it. This is a dream. It's just that people are spending time and trying to work out the mystery on their own with their notebooks and their friends. That's all. That's what we really want to do.
Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Kemper.
It's always amazing to be here. The greatest of the mystery podcasts.
Oh, well, we'll end on that.
It's you and She Done It. And because you're doing different things, it's fair.
I'm happy to share that pedestal with Caroline Crampton.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Maureen Johnson and Jay Cooper for speaking with me about their new collaboration, You Are the Detective, The Creeping Hand Murder, a solve-it-yourself mystery. I have included a link in the show notes if you are interested in checking it out. If you're looking for more all about Agatha in your life, in 2 days' time, on the 5th of October, I will be dropping a Patreon episode all about The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I brought on a fellow patron, Nick Cardillo, who has been featured here on the regular podcast before. He is quite the Sherlock Holmes aficionado, and we had a rollicking good time talking about that classic tale. Just in time for spooky season. It is October, after all. So head on over to Patreon if that interests you. There's a link in the show notes. For my next episode, I'm very excited to say that I have 2 Christie adaptations to discuss with you that I have never watched before. These are 2 adaptations that recently became available to all of us because they recently popped up on 2 different YouTube channels. So I'm including links for these adaptations in my show notes as well if you'd like to watch them in advance of the episode. The first is a Miss Marple adaptation from Estonia in 1990. It's an adaptation of The Case of the Perfect Maid, which is one of my favorite Miss Marple short stories. I really, really love that short story. And Ida Iver plays Miss Marple. I was aware of this series. I think that I even mentioned it briefly when I did my 10 Little Poirots and Marples episode, ranking the different actors who have played Miss Marple and Monsieur Poirot over the years. But it was only recently that any of these episodes were made available. So I'm going to be discussing episode 1 of that series, which is titled The Exemplary Maid, but is an adaptation of The Case of the Perfect Maid. And then I'm also going to be discussing this 1962 American pilot episode of a would-be Hercule Poirot series starring Martin Gable as Monsieur Poirot. So this episode was later reused as an episode of General Electric Theater, but it was meant to be the first in a whole show starring Poirot in the US solving cases. There's actually this lovely little epilogue to the pilot in which Martin Gable as Poirot talks about what is yet to come on the show, and it's very sad because none of that ever happened. I'll talk a little bit about the provenance of that would-be show when I cover this episode, but this too was never available to watch until recently, and now we can all quite easily watch it. And that one is an adaptation of The Disappearance of Mr. Davenheim. So I'll be discussing these 2 adaptations, a Miss Marple and a Monsieur Poirot. I love it. There's just always something new popping up in the world of Agatha Christie. And I will be thanking the 2 owners of the YouTube channels who recently uploaded these adaptations. I will do that properly on my next episode. So really looking forward to that. If you would like to email me, send me a message, please, at allaboutthedame@gmail.com. You can find the podcast on Instagram at allaboutagatha, and you can find me on my author website, kemperdonovan.com. Links to all of this in the show notes. You can also find links to the first 2 mysteries in my Ghostwriter Mysteries series, The Busybody and Loose Lips. The cover of the 3rd book in this series, which doesn't come out until next summer, summer of 2026, the cover recently made an appearance online, which means I can reveal the title, which is Sweet Spot. Yes, I'm all about the alliteration. I can't help myself. So you can go online and check out the cover and also presumably start pre-ordering the book. And pre-orders really do help me out as an author. So wherever you do your book purchases, make it an indie if you possibly can. You can always go to bookshop.org. I'd very much appreciate some pre-orders on that book in the coming months. And as always, I would appreciate ratings and or reviews for the podcast to expand the reach of this Christie-loving community that we've built up together. And on that note, I'll see you next time. Bye.